Hi, everybody. This is Colonel. All right, there we go. I have no idea why it's doing that view. There we go. Get this stuff right. So, good afternoon, everyone. If you haven't checked out my USS Liberty interview, please, after this live stream, I encourage you to go do that. I am here today. I just got contacted by War Hamster Brady. We're going to be joined by Ghost of Base Patrick Henry shortly. He had a couple personal things to attend to. We'll bring him in when he gets here. But Brady offered us a challenge that I could not turn down, and I'm going to turn the floor over to him and let him explain.
Well, thank you. Good to see you as always. This is we don't normally do shows on Saturdays and impromptu, but what really happened is I slept in a little bit this Saturday morning. We're expecting a big snowstorm, and I get on Twitter/X, and on my feed is a really interesting story that talks about just another USAID revelation. Now, the reason I reached out to the Colonel and Ghost of Base Patrick Henry is we've been talking about USAID for years. And, we're taking our victory lap this week, as I like to say, because now it's gone mainstream, everything we've talked about with USAID. Anyways, there's a story about USAID that I started researching literally 2 hours ago. And everything that's popping up completely feeds into everything we've been talking about, from Operation Gladio to you name it. There's all the connecting dots to this story. So I go, okay, it would be fun. Let's go live. Let's just do our research in real time and show you how we do it and draw the connections. And this is a perfect example of this. So neither the Colonel or Gordon actually knows the topic that I'm going to dive into. So it'll be kind of fun. This is completely unscripted. I think to start with, we should do a quick overview of exactly how the State Department / CIA has been conducting foreign policy using these non-government organizations, NGOs, for the last multiple decades. So do you want to give a 2 to 3 minute, 30,000-foot view of that before we dive in?
So what we found, obviously, if you go back to even any time in the United States history, the 1800s, 1900s, prior to World War II, the State Department had played a pivotal role in regime change exercises, primarily, and it stepped up significantly during Teddy Roosevelt's tenure, on into the early 1900s. And then you have the Bolshevik Revolution, all of this stuff. There were groups of people packaged together through the State Department that was sent overseas, and all of this prior to World War II. Basically, the State Department was the pivotal role in regime change operations for the same organizations, same families that we talk about in the international syndicate, because this is literally centuries old. This is not anything new. The secret society show that Brady and I do obviously ties into this, because it shows you the different generational aspects of the same people, the same families orchestrating, using the U.S. State Department basically as their foreign policy, not necessarily a president's foreign policy, but they screen the presidential candidates so that regardless of whether they get a D or an R in the position, they basically are perpetuating the same regime change type philosophies. It changed significantly after World War II because they added so all of them had their own intelligence capabilities that they used privately, but that left them vulnerable to being, killed, charged with treason, and all of that other stuff. So their brilliant idea after World War II was to fold in a worldwide, by country, new intelligence function absent MI6, which is kind of viewed as the granddaddy of them all. And this new intelligence apparatus was functioning as the international syndicates intelligence, but all of us thought our taxpayer dollars was going to an intelligence service whose mission was to keep us safe. It was never, ever to gather intelligence for us or to keep us safe. It was always to represent the business interest of the international syndicate.
Yeah, that's a pretty good summary. There's one other transition that really happened. We used to, well, the European powers used to, conquer or colonize the rest of the world using overt force, war, what have you. That changed after World War II. In the United Nations, we signed a pact. We're no longer going to be able to use military to take your resources. And that's really what it's all about. It's always been about gathering the resources to yourself. It's an offspring of mercantilism, which is a philosophy that there's a finite amount of resources on the planet. And the goal of any nation is to gather as much of them for yourselves as possible. So it changes after World War II, and we get the Cold War era, and the CIA is very active in regime change using covert operations. The Church Committee comes around in 1975, exposes a lot of what the CIA has been doing, all under the command of the State Department / Pentagon. And who's pulling the puppet strings are the multinational corporations, because the reason they're doing this is they want cheap resources and cheap labor for their own businesses, multinational corporations, what have you. The Cold War ends right around 1990, and they didn't stop their activities in any way, shape, or form, but they had to kind of subtly change how they do it. And what you would see in 1990-91 is a rise of all of these NGOs or non-government organizations or different air quote charities that the CIA and the State Department and other government and the Pentagon would funnel money into under the guise of some kind of socially acceptable, socially beneficial umbrella. In the meantime, they're funneling money to groups inside foreign countries so that they can influence their politics and sometimes overthrow their government. And what we saw happen, or what's been exposed in just the first, not even 3 weeks of the Trump administration with the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, Elon Musk DOGE, is they went after the USAID. And it is not USAID. I saw a sign in one of the protests that cracked me up. USAID saves lives. What? USAID is the Agency for International Development, and that's code speak for international influence peddling, which is what they do. And to think that USAID saves lives is ridiculous. Never say USAID; it's always USAID. It's important.
International development of the international syndicate.
Agreed. Perfect.
And I do want to, because I think this is very, very important, I want to delineate USAID from NED. Not that they're not kissing cousins, because they are. You have to understand that the collective of USAID existed prior to JFK. It was in the State Department. There were 3 separate programs that were combined into the USAID. Thank you, Goes, for joining us.
Hey guys, what's up?
Hey, buddy.
So we were just kind of delineating the kissing cousins of USAID and National Endowment for Democracy. So you have in the 60s, the USAID that basically took the cultural pieces of creating the NGOs and funding them that were going to be unleashed on the world. The National Endowment for Democracy that was set up under Reagan basically did the overarching Democrat, Republican, i.e. political piece, the union piece, and the chamber piece, which is big business, which I refer to as the international syndicate. And so this collective of jackboots under USAID, the guys on the street in the Cultural Revolution, And you had the IRI and the Democratic counterpart doing the political regime change aspect. You had the chamber portion of the slush fund of the NED doing the business interests, and then the union would go into places like Venezuela and Chile and Nicaragua, and they would then orchestrate basically fake union efforts or undermine real union efforts. And this collective spear would be jabbed into the heart of anybody trying to save their country from undue influence of the West. And
Yeah,
it was
it's any populist, whether it's populist left or populist right.
correct.
It's establishment versus populism. Establishment, of course, is the Anglo-American rules-based order, the people who really run the world and all that. So what we're looking at here is the three of us did a really great show about the color revolution. I know Colonel hates that term, but most of the people watching will understand what we mean here. She called it Gladio. It's a coup in Georgia. And what's going on in Georgia is they didn't, the government of Georgia wanted to maintain ties with Russia, their neighbor. They also wanted to keep control of their own natural resources, which are pretty abundant. And so what happens is everyone says that there's these Soros NGOs go in there. The State Department puts pressure. We've got the international media starts calling these people, anti-democratic, et cetera. They're the people in power that are popularly elected by their own people. And they need to have a visual demonstration on the streets. So you get money is funneled to these NGOs, non-government organizations, to do rent-a-riots. And they put money through the student organizations, media. They use the internet, or they used to, before they started censoring, when the internet started being used against them. And they get these street demonstrations, just like you saw with the Ukraine Maidan Revolution 2014. And that's really the game. And as always, we talk about follow the money. You can figure out who's actually doing these things. And that's what's beautiful about what DOGE has been doing, and why they went after USAID first, is you just see all of these international organizations that are just paper fronts for what basically is a CIA operation to overthrow and influence foreign governments. Gordon, you got anything you want to add?
Yeah, and I would argue. I think I was just trying to verify this before I said it, but I think it's Romania where that's happening right now, where they're openly saying that it's a mighty coup. They're comparing it directly to what happened in Ukraine in 2014. And I apologize if y'all said this before I jumped on.
No.
But yeah, that's I've been tracking that now for several weeks. But basically, there's a populist uprising across Europe that's happening just like in America, and in all these places where these populist candidates who are basically the Donald Trump, akin to Donald Trump or Putin in their respective countries, they get into power and then they pass legislation, or they attempt to pass legislation to force these foreign funded NGOs to publicly disclose where their financing is coming from. That's all it is. They're not shutting down the NGO. They're just forcing them to expose or disclose publicly where they're getting their money from. And that effort, for example, in Slovakia, led to Robert Fico, the prime minister, being shot in the chest 5 times last May because he passed that legislation. And then in Georgia, to your point, Brady, what's his name? I can't even pronounce his name, but their prime minister tried to pass the same thing.
It's identical to the Foreign Agent Registration Act that we have here in America. Right. And we're seeing the fact that they have the audacity to ask, foreign entities to actually tell us who you are, is what they're saying.
Yep. We decide. And a member of the European Union calls this guy up and says, "You saw what happened to Robert Fico. If you keep down this path, like you're next, basically." And I think the guy may have been trying to warn him out of like a courtesy. He may have been trying to threaten him. Doesn't really matter. But the point is, the message was,
they all know.
Yeah, you will be killed if you continue down this path. You will be killed. And that path, by the way, is sovereignty. All they're asking for is self-governance. And it's so despicable. It's so
audacity that actually want to conversation. The audacity to want to actually rule, of self-governance, self-determination.
Yeah. Yep.
But that's what Schumer did to Trump, right? The CIA will get you 7 ways to Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, basically the point I made the other night when I was on Devolution Power Hour, I've had a number of people like message me during and after the show. And the point I made was, everything that you as an American have experienced over the past 5 years is a small taste of how the rest of the world has lived for the past, 50, 60, 70 years?
70 years.
Since World War II, basically.
Yeah.
And that's been their lived experience.
How about 5,000 years?
Yeah, true. But I'm saying from this specific program, from this specific playbook, these entities, this organization, this matrix of groups, this network, this specific network, what they've done to us over the past 5 years is what they've done to them. And the people there, a lot of them are smart enough to figure it out, but they have no power to stop it. And so what can they do other than just oppose it, resist it, and basically despise the U.S. government in response? And so if you wonder why there's so much animosity around the world towards the U.S. government, it's because of their lived experience. The same reason that you despise probably the U.S. government, because of what you can observe them doing to you.
But Gordon, let me just reemphasize what you just said. For the last year and a half, 2 years that I've been doing what I'm currently doing, the people around the world, I was just on a morning show in London. I was on a show in Sydney, Australia. I will be on a show in Ireland in the next couple of days. They, for the first time, have hope that people in America is finally going to realize what their government has been doing to the rest of the world, because they know until we know, they have no hope.
And we'll get into this in many episodes we're going to do between the three of us. This is an extension of the British Empire that America just inherited after World War II. But that's a pretty good overview of how this works. But always follow the money. Now, the Department of Government Efficiency, the DOGE, we'll just shorten it from now on, is, by the way, did you guys see my tweet yesterday? It turns out that the Department of Government Efficiency's website has an entire page dedicated to memes.
Yes.
And they are hilarious. I mean,
really?
Yes, they're hilarious.
I'll send you the link later. It's but the fact that a government website has a bunch of memes and there's 100 of them is hilarious to me. That means they're so in touch with this new media, which we're a part of. Long story short, DOGE went after USAID first, and they basically started looking at where they were spending their money while the government waste. Now, the early headlines were all about all these DEI programs in America and around the world, and everyone got up in arms about that. You can't be spending money on, transsexual, banjo lessons in Azerbaijan or what have you. I don't think that's actually one, but it sounds like a lot of them.
I'm going to look right now.
But the bigger story is the one that the three of us and a lot of other friends in our corner of the internet have been talking about for a long time, is where's all the USAID money going overseas towards these coups? And I wake up this morning. Oh, and that was a big deal. And Bongino on Thursday highlighted Michael Schellenberger did a Substack. And basically he can trace USAID money through impeachment 1.0 against Donald Trump. He can trace, the money trail is there. USAID is, and if you remember Alexander Vindman and his lovely twin brother, who's now a U.S. congressman somehow, both Ukrainians, they've got another relative, I don't know if it's their brother or father, who's been the recipient of over $12 million of USAID funding in Ukraine. So that's all real. And that's the bigger story, is how USAID money has been used as a kind of a cutout of the CIA to commit these color revolutions or coups. So that's the big story. So I wake up this morning late because it's a Saturday and sleep in a little bit, and something shows up in my Twitter feed. And I just started reading this short thread, and then I started digging into the names there. Now, neither the Ghost or the Colonel really know what I'm going to jump into here, but we thought we'd do the deep dive, because I just started looking into this like 2 hours ago. And I think we're going to do this because these are two great researchers who have a whole lot of background knowledge. We just start going through these connections, and you guys are going to be amazed at what we find so quickly. So if I may, I'm going to jump into the Twitter thread, and we'll go from there. Sound good?
Okay. Yep.
Okay. This is from WikiLeaks. Pretty good source. It says USAID has pushed nearly $500 million through a secretive U.S. government-financed NGO called Internews Network. So Internews is the star of the show, which has worked with 4,291 media outlets, producing in 1 year 4,799 hours of broadcasting, reaching up to 778 million people. So they've got some reach with and training, in air quotes and real quotes, over 9,000 journalists. Now, is that not exactly what we've described, how the CIA cut out NGOs work in all these countries around the world? You want to own their news. That's how we did the Arab Spring with social media.
Yep.
The operation claims offices in over 30 countries, including, there's some fun countries here, but we'll get into that more when we get to their website. London, Paris, Kyiv, Ukraine. Well, that's when my ears perked up. These guys were there in the Ukraine. Bangkok and Nairobi. It's headed by Jean Bourgault. I think that's how I'm going to pronounce her name. And we're going to dive into her because she's interesting. Who pays herself $451K a year. She worked out of the U.S. Embassy in Moscow during the early 90s, where she was in charge of a $250 million budget and in other revolts or conflicts at critical times, before formally rotating out of 6 years at USAID to, what's it called again? Internews Network. So
Internews, yep. I've been digging on them a little bit.
Okay, you had them on your radar before?
No. I saw what Mike Benz put up, and that got me on it. Yeah, so
okay, so I'm sure Benz is on top of this one pretty quickly.
I think all he said was wait till you learn about Internews. That's the only post I saw. So then I just started digging on them just to kind of.
All right, that's great because that's the direction we're going today.
Awesome.
So I want to highlight something you just said before you keep going on the news. I want everybody to understand how important that point that you made. When you actually understand real history, which is why the three of us collectively work so well together, because we understand the importance. I just said yesterday and the day before that, Venezuela, Brazil, all of these places they never closed their news down, right? Venezuela, back during Chavez, they had independent media. They never closed their media down, unlike Zelensky and all of the people that were told are democracies. It was the use of the media in most of the Operation Gladio, Operation Condor coups the CIA effected that was foreign influenced, if not directly foreign owned, that orchestrated a large piece of the unrest and the jackboots on the streets. So this is critical. Keep going.
Okay, so it says Bourgault, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I apologize to the nice lady if I mispronounce her name, but that's one of the challenges of, we dig into this stuff all over the world, and I can't pronounce. I think I mispronounced probably half the names of the foreigners we talk about, but blanket apology for that. Her bio and those of its other key people and board members have been recently scrubbed from its website, but they remain accessible at archive.org. So we're going to jump on that in a second because I'll show you the website, which is actually, I'll show you how it's scrubbed. Normally you go to one of these foundations or organizations and you go to the About page and you can see who sits on the board. Well, as I started doing this homework 2 hours ago, none of those, this page cannot be found. There's going to be 5 examples of that. And this is a story that just really broke today. So they're scrambling. Tells me there's smoke.
Yeah. So can I point out that, are you going to talk about the year that they were created?
It's 2001. I believe.
It actually says that they were set up in 1982. A U.S. intelligence-linked organization created to create press freedom and train journalists since it started in 1982. Coincidentally, this is the year before National Endowment for Democracy gets set up in 1983, while they're actually drafting the law to put up basically all of this crap happening. So
you mean just a few years after Operation Mockingbird got exposed in the Church Committee?
Yes, exactly. Okay, keep going.
That's got to be a coincidence, right?
Just a coincidence.
All right. Records show the board being co-chaired by Democrat Securocrat Richard Kessler and Simone Otis Coxey, wife of NVIDIA billionaire Trench Coxey, both major Democratic donors. Do you guys know Kessler or Coxey?
I don't know about Coxey. Kessler sounds very familiar, though.
Just in passing.
Okay.
Yeah.
See if you can dig something on him, Gordon, while I'm reading.
Okay.
In 2023, supported by Hillary Clinton, Bugeaud launched a $10 million fund at the Clinton Global Initiative. All right, so now there's smoke coming out of my computer as I'm reading this. This is just the first tweet. The IN page showed a picture of Bugeaud at the CGI Clinton Global Initiative has also been deleted. So that's being scrubbed. IN Internews Network has at least 6 captive subsidiaries under unrelated names, including the one based out of the Cayman Islands. Now, you guys have both heard me talk about the Cayman Islands because I've been there a bunch of times on scuba diving trips and was very seriously considering repatriating there before Trump won in 2016. So I've done business in the Caymans. I've had Cayman subsidiaries. It's not all corrupt, trust me. But yeah,
it's corruptible.
It's corruptible. Yeah, there are some very lax laws that can be exploited. You guys know the story of why the Cayman is a tax haven? It's actually worth a 30-second diversion.
Yeah, go for it.
So sometime, and I want to say it's like the 1700s or 1800s, there was a British ship that got wrecked off the coast, off the would have been the southwest coast of the Caymans. Mm-hmm. And that wreck, you can still dive and see off there and see some of the remnants. I've seen it, but
I think I've seen it too. I think I went snorkeling there when I was a kid, and I think I saw like the wreck. Yeah,
there's a few timbers left of it. Long story short, the people wash ashore, and generally speaking, you get into an island like that, which Cayman Islands at the time were basically habitated by a bunch of pirates and people that are outlaws.
Yep.
But they did something strange, and they actually helped the people. And when the next British Armada came by a year later, they flagged them down and said, "Here, have your people back." One of those people that was marooned and one of the shipwreck survivors was the favorite niece of the current British Queen. And so he gets home to London, and they had a imperial decree that nobody on the island of Cayman Islands would ever pay taxes again for saving the nephew. So that's the story of that. That's how it became a tax haven. At least when I was there, that's the story they told.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, that makes sense because I mean, you think about all the money that was flowing through there in the 1500s and the 1600s and even the 1700s because of the gold and silver coming out of Peru, gold coming out of Mexico, being shipped back to Spain, and then the other European countries converting their naval captains into privateers, who then eventually just became pirates, stealing the gold and then hiding out in the islands. And so it would make sense that you would create banks that were completely impervious to all laws.
Yeah, and that takes us all the way through. That goes all the way through the recent series the Colonel and I did on BCCI, the world's sleaziest bank. It's the same story, but Bahamas, all that. And I'm actually going to be in the Bahamas next month.
Nice.
It's kind of cool. All right, let's keep going with this. There's a tweet. It's Internews Networks total. They're going on the website. Recipient of $472 million. I don't know why it says child recipient there. I don't know what that means. This is talking about their reach. They're showing their sources. Removed internet news page of its chief executive, Jean Bourgeot, at the CGI. This is her in 2023 speaking at the Clinton Global Initiative.
Can I back up a little bit on them?
Yes.
their office in Russia was called the Educated Media Foundation. It says it was formerly known as Internews Russia. Their office in Russia was raided back in the early 2000s, and they seized financial documentation that created. They actually arrested in 2007, or he was detained at the airport, the head of the Educated Media Foundation, Manana Aslamizian, for a customs issue. But it says, interestingly enough, that they received like a crap load of money from NED, keeping in mind that they were created right before NED launched its big pocketbook, and that it created propaganda operations from some very interesting PR firms that is known to house CIA agents like Hill and Knowlton in Washington, D.C. I saw that and I was like, oh, you're kidding me. Hill and Knowlton was one of the most notorious. They actually literally parked CIA agents in Hill and Knowlton when they got in trouble and they wanted to pretend like they weren't working for the CIA anymore.
So now you're seeing why when I started reading this, I called you both. I said, we've got to get on the air. I wanted to start throwing stuff at the wall. I go, this is right in our face. I mean, we knew what was going on, but now we actually have more names than we had before. It's freaking unbelievable to me.
The fact that they were so audacious, and it says here that they worked with Radio Free Europe and Radio Liberty, which are both arms of the CIA, and they actually set them up in Russia.
Well, the first 10 years after the Cold War in Russia was basically just a big money grab from Western financial interests, stealing everything they could.
A resource grab, which gave us the Browders and gave us the Magnitsky Act, all based on lies.
Yeah, and that's why we have Moscow on the River Tame in London. There are more multi-billionaire Russian oligarchs in London than there are in the whole country of Russia, which is interesting.
Because they were stealing all of the shit.
Yep. All right, this one's good. They funneled nearly $500 million through this building, which is in Arcata, California. Does that look like a $500 million? This is This is their headquarters,
and it's been empty forever.
Yeah, I mean, it's an abandoned building. That's an empty building. I can see in the windows. That's definitely an empty building.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So their funding has doubled since 2016. They're getting over looks like 124 million a year.
Like they were mounting a media campaign against Donald Trump during his presidency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So here's the executive compensation. I didn't get a chance to do searches on all of these names. I started with Burgo. I don't know who Yusha Chaudhary is, but that last name is familiar. I've run across it before. I'm guessing that is the wife of somebody who's been on our research list before. Let me know if you can find anything. I'll keep going. This is her bio. It's a little small to read. I'll grab that from a different site when we get to her bio. Oh, but the key thing here is I'll get her bio here in a second. Let me get off the Twitter page. Where interviews, there's Charity Graph. It's a really useful site, but we're not gonna be able to read it here unless I blow it up.
Wow. The guy who made that website, like the website that everyone's using to search USAID, posted about the U.S. Agency for Global Media. I'm not trying to go off on a tangent. It's just, I'm just looking at this thing now. I'm just digging into it, and it's, kind of like the executive summary of all of this. Like, it doesn't matter which agency we talk about, which group we talk about, which organization we talk about. It's all kind of the same thing, just over and over and over again. There is no such thing as self-governance in America. We haven't had self-governance in a very long time. I mean, we can argue when exactly that stopped, but
1861.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah, that's what I think most people land around that date. The only thing we have in this country is brute force, and what this is. And let me just share my screen. Brady, hold on, give me 1 second.
Yeah, I'll stop my share.
So yeah, if you want to share that. So this is the website for this organization called U.S. Agency for Global Media, and
Yes.
as far as I can tell, this organization was founded in 2018. So it pretty much lines up with the whole Mike Benz theory that in 2016 they had like this revelation or this big moment of epiphany where they realized how dangerous this whole populist uprising was. And so, you know, the what is it called? The Center, was it the Center for Democracy, or what's the organization he always talks about?
NED, National Endowment for Democracy.
That's it, National Endowment for Democracy. Thank you. Those kind of organizations quickly sprung up and were very well funded and had lots of resources and had this built-in network, and were basically just giant censorship operations to shut down conversations that really should be happening. And that's brute force. Like when you're using that kind of power, even though it's not kinetic violent force, it's still brute force, because you're shutting down websites, you're shutting down voices, you're closing down people's ability to express themselves on the internet. You're threatening people by freezing their bank accounts or taking away their job, or, you know, threatening them and their families. I mean, that is all brute force. And that's what this all is. This all represents a basically almost like the final evolution of tyranny, with the window dressing of a free and open society and democracy. This is tyranny in every definition. This is absolute tyranny. And that's what the U.S. government effectively represents.
Yeah, this is the stuff that Thomas Malthus and Hegel and everyone talked about, 200 years ago. This is the New World Order trying to be imposed upon us. That's why we're spending so much time on Skull and Bones, the Colonel I are, also known as the Order. No coincidence. September 11th, 1991, 10 years before 9/11, is when George H.W. Bush gave his New World Order speech. All this stuff ties together, and it's exactly right.
Can you see this?
Yeah, we can.
This is a chart that at the heart of that circle says CIA funds institutes, foundations, and associations. And then the circles around it is conferences, journalists, news services, student groups, universities, magazines, educational association, and charitable group. And that is describing this organization called Inner News.
It's wonderful. All right, Gordon, you want to give me back the screen?
Yeah, go ahead and take it. I'm done with it. I was just clicking around.
Okay, just almost done with this tweet thread. California Secretary of State filing as of October 2024, just a few months ago, ties Bujo to that 7th Street Arcata address. Here she is at the World Economic Forum in 2024, calling to develop exclusion lists to pressure advertisers to fund good news and information in order to deal with, here it comes, disinformation.
There's the brute force.
For those who don't know, this entire disinformation censorship regime comes from the U.S. State Department. That is the headquarters of all of that, which is really interesting because the State Department is supposed to be in charge of, handling our international affairs, and yet they're censoring people domestically. And when I say State Department, you should always know that in parentheses right next to it is the CIA, which also cannot operate on U.S. soil, allegedly.
Which is why they put all of these front organizations in place.
Yep.
You're still showing Gordon's screen. There's mine.
Okay, is that better?
No, that's Gordon's.
Yes. Yeah, there you go. Switch down. There you go.
I'm sitting there reading, and
I'm not seeing the words I'm reading.
it's all right. We're doing our research in real time, so it's not going to be precise. She's at the World Economic Forum. I'm going to get into that in a second here. How did they lose their way? Johns Hopkins magazine. In the 1990s, Internews began to attract serious money. George Soros, you knew he was going to show up, right?
Right.
And his Open Society Institute became supporters, as did eventually the Knight Foundation, the MacArthur Foundation, and dozens of others. So we're going to, when we get done with the secret societies, we're going to do a deep dive into foundations, because that's part of the whole circle jerk.
Yeah, I've covered several of them in our Alpha Warrior segment, so that's awesome.
Can I give some quick background about how these foundations work?
Sure.
So the first, air quotes again, tax-free foundations in the United States, the first one was the Carnegie Foundation, robber barons. The second one was the Rockefeller Foundations. Those came into play between 1911 and 1913. These are the same people that owned the banks, that created the Federal Reserve System, the 17th Amendment, and of course, gave us the income tax in 1913. So they gave an income tax to the rest of us while they hid all of their generational wealth behind a tax-free foundation for the rest of history. And so you have these foundations have accumulated billions of dollars, which they never pay taxes on, while the rest of us do. It's one of the biggest rat fucks in history. That's what happened. That's the actual word for it, is a rat fuck. Excuse my language. I never cuss on the air, but I can't describe this any other way.
I'm shocked.
Yeah.
So that's where these foundations come from. They hide behind the guise of charitable giving. But if you look at like the Gates Foundation, you can see that they, we put all this money into, disease research in Africa. Well, we all know what's really going on. If you followed if you followed the three of us at all, you know what's going on. This is just regime change operations, and they're making money hand over fist. These tax-free foundations.
Yeah. Well, so like what everyone is getting triggered over, and what everyone the zeitgeist right now is about these ridiculous sounding programs. Women's studies in Pakistan, and $50 million for condoms in Gaza. The extent that stuff is actually being implemented in these places is only to the extent that they want to demoralize those societies. That's it. It's just about and all that really requires, by the way, is just the presentation that it's actually being implemented. It's very like that. That does not require very much. That requires a camera, some actors, and then basically platforms to disseminate. Here's what we're doing, and then you broadcast these productions across their media networks, whether that's on television or on social media or whatever. But all that it really is required is that those populations believe that they are getting these programs forced upon them by these NGOs, these organizations, whatever it is, for the sole purpose of demoralizing them. Because the demoralization campaign is a huge part of regime change operations and conquering a society. That is effectively what we experienced during the 2020 Summer of Love, and then everything after that.
The cultural destruction.
Yes. So like none of these my point is that none of these programs are actually really happening. I think most people understand that we're not actually spending $50 million for condoms in Gaza. Like that's not actually what it is. All that money is being laundered for other purposes and other reasons. And most of it is, money laundering and grift. Yes. But also funding these proxy militias that are used to kinetically overthrow governments, financing these groups that go out in the streets and destabilize and create unrest, news operations like this Internews thing and these other agencies, the National Endowment for Democracy, that kind of nonsense. So that's the whole grift of it. And the point that, Brady, I know you have made many times since I've known you, is that these are not our tax dollars funding this stuff. That's what's really important to understand. This is a situation where they print the money, They send the money out, and then they collect taxes from you to make the interest payments, basically to themselves, to cover that. It's not your tax dollars going out. They're making the money, and every time they hit the print button, which is all done digitally, they print the money. The dollars in your bank account, the dollars in your investment portfolio go down in value. So they print the money, they steal your money through taxation, and they use your taxes just to make the interest payments. That's it.
But they straddle us with the debt forever.
For sure, absolutely, yeah.
And
but it's not your tax dollars going overseas.
Correct.
That's
but
newly printed money. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I also want people to understand a very important point you made about how the funds actually get distributed. I've made this point repeatedly, that the contracts that are let, they don't have a checkbook and they don't have cash. These are all done via contracts. And the contracts are basically, we've covered this in several of our Operation Gladio exposés, that, for example, when we were funding the Mujahideen in Afghanistan via the intelligence service in Pakistan, there were contracts written to purchase weapons. And what happened was the third party that got the contract, like Khashoggis, the weapons dealers, they get these contracts, and the contracts, let's just say, is $100 million. Well, they took $1 million and went to someplace in Eastern Soviet Union, and like Bulgaria, which was a weapons trafficking hub, and bought, rusty old rifles from the Soviet Union that wasn't worth, pennies on the dollar, and gave them to the Mujahideen so that they had basically met the criteria of providing guns to the Mujahideen, which left them, another $99 million in their slush fund to go off and do all of these other things. And the same thing with the condoms things. I explained to people that whoever got that contract was not in a foreign government. It was here in the United States. What at most happened was they bought $5 condoms that they charged the government for at 25 cents a piece. And then they pocketed the $4.75 and took a picture, as Ghost said, of those condoms being delivered to a warehouse in God knows where, that some American owns and leased to the government to store the condoms in. So everybody's making bank off of us.
Don't forget 10% for the big guy.
10% for the big guy.
That's right.
Let's finish this. So Evelyn Messenger.
Money laundering.
Hey, I'm going to step away for a second. Just keep going, and I'll jump back in.
You gonna be able to hear us?
Yeah. I'll be able to hear. I'm just making my daughter just walked in from a birthday party. I'm going to make her a sandwich.
Yeah, this is impromptu. No worries whatsoever. Take care of you got to take care of.
Yep.
So going on, it says Evelyn Messenger secured a large sum from the National Endowment for Democracy, NED, which is, of course, a CIA front, to study independent media in Eastern Europe. Internews secured $8 million to set up a media center, a news agency, and a broadcast and print outlets in Ukraine. I just paused there because we know what's going on there. It changed just about everything, recalls Makino. We became a lot more effective because we could hire staff and cover a lot more ground. We also had to become much more professional. Messenger, who eventually would have a falling out with Hoffman, didn't like some of the changes. The first phase of internews was really a lot of fun. We'd come up with little bits of money and do things all pretty ad hoc, but then the organization began structuring itself around getting money from the government. Okay, that really fits a pattern. So let's talk about Miss, what is her name? Bourgeot.
The WEF queen.
Yeah, so that's exactly where I'm going. Let me find it real quick. All right. So I decided to look her up as I'm, reading today. And what do I find? The third thing? Oh, World Economic Forum has a, can you put that up on screen?
Sure.
World Economic Forum. She's the president and chief executive officer of Internews. Over 80 countries around the world. Here's where it gets fun. She's overseen Internews growth in areas underserved by local media. What does that mean, underserved by local media? It means
That means the local media isn't reporting what they want them to say.
exactly. Such as Afghanistan and South Sudan. Boy, we haven't had any turmoil or conflict there, have we?
Not
This
at all.
gal, once again, we have another Forrest Gump. She shows up in the most interesting places. And under her leadership, Internews has led to growing sector of humanitarian information. I have no idea what that means. These people make up terms that sound so nice and gushy. It means nothing. What is humanitarian information? How about just information?
No, no. It's bleeding heart information to make you feel good about something really bad that they're going to do.
And it gives the politicians a heck of a lot of cover.
Correct. For funding it.
Expanded into U.S. programs to meet unique domestic information gaps. What's an information?
Propaganda.
Yeah. Develop strategies to address the growing challenges of digital information technology and center the information needs of women and girls throughout its programs. So now
they don't even know what a woman is. What the fuck?
Well, they do now because they're not allowed to be anything. We're not back to being a binary country. Thank you. During her tenure, Internews has piloted and developed innovative programs, including Earth Journalism Network, United for News, and Listening Post Collective. So if Gordon was at his computer, and you can do the same, I haven't looked at those three, but I'm sure there's all kinds of fun stuff in those three sites. So if you're watching and listening, want to help us out with the homework, do some digging. That's a good place to start. Earth Journalism Network, United for News, and Listening Post Collective. And of course, prior to Internews, Bugeaud worked internationally in countries undergoing dramatic shifts in the media and political landscapes.
Coups.
Yes.
So I'll just interpret it for you. Keep going.
This is the first thing I read this morning, and literally 5 minutes later, I'm on the phone with you saying, we've got to do a show. She joined Internews in 2001 as vice president for programs after 6 years with the U.S. Agency for International Development.
Yeah, that was her follow-on assignment.
Yep, she worked for USAID, and now she's getting money from
US. CIA, and then she works for Internews, which is CIA. So she's just on her next assignment.
Including 3 years at the U.S. Embassy in Moscow and as a strategic advisor for media and community development programs in post-war Kosovo, Serbia, and Montenegro.
Which we totally fucked up there. And then she's at Russia, which I just read to you guys about them getting raided. She was there, and as a result, they got raided because Russia knew what they were doing.
All right. So here, Gordon, you got anything?
Not at the moment, but give me a second and I'll see what I can find.
I have something that I want to share with you that I think it was Cousin It sent to me from 2019, talking about Pierre Omidyar. Do y'all know him? Omidyar. Okay. Mm-hmm. It's titled Beneath the Facade of Progressive Journalism. One of America's premier data monarchs is funding a global information war in shaping the media landscape. And it's talking about everything that you just talked about, but it's also talking about secret workshops that were held in Canada in January of 2019 and a news industry bailout of $646 million in Canadian subsidies that was sent to a bunch of mainstream media. It said Jesse Brown, a Canadian journalist who participated in the meeting, complained that the first thing he noticed was one major public stakeholder wasn't present, i.e. the public. So inside of the Canadian journalist landscape, you have a former Obama administration official who has also served in Hillary Clinton's State Department, presiding over the media discussions, and that was the Omidyar Network. And I'm looking for the name of the person. They call him Scott, but I'm looking for the first name. I don't see it in there, but they talk about his boss being the Pierre Omidyar, eBay founder, best known for sponsorship of The Intercept, and how he influences the media while he directs his fortune in many of the same political NGOs that George Soros does, and uses them to attack anyone that threatens their empire. Samantha Power, the former U.S. ambassador to the UN, who we now know was Biden after this, was Biden's USAID person, praised Omidyar as someone who is following in the footsteps of Soros. So it goes on this article about global cartel of setting up all the fact checker organizations under his effort. It talks about them destabilizing Ukraine during the coup, using the news, and that he also funded efforts in Zimbabwe and the Philippines, that he partnered closely with NED and USAID. Then it goes on to say something very interesting. It says that his political agenda came in when he began funding Alliance for Securing Democracy, which was a pet project of Bill Kristol's.
Interesting.
Hey, yeah. And Bill Kristol, of course, his father Irving is
yep.
one of the founders of the modern Republican Party, otherwise known as neoconservatism. The Trotskyites, who were, of course, communists, and so the modern Republican Party is a communist organization, and most people don't even realize that. But it was literally founded by communists.
I don't call them communists; they're more akin to fascists. But and that's a misconception. It's a misconception of the way everyone describes the right and the left. Fascism is not right, and communism is left. Fascism is also left. So the proper scale is the far left is 100% government totalitarianism. The far right is 0% government, which is also known as anarchy. What the founding fathers wanted us to be is as close to zero government as possible and still maintain order and have enough security to preserve our God-given natural rights. So that's about 10% away from anarchy. Now, we've shifted all the way to about 50% of the way America is today. But when you talk about all the different isms, far left, everything that's a totalitarian government is far left, whether it be fascism or not. And I've been making the case that the neocons you just discussed were, because they did fund the fascists in Germany and Mussolini, et cetera. There's a direct money trail to them. So they weren't necessarily communism, but they were totalitarianism, and they were tyrants. So
yeah.
So let me finish this last paragraph real quick, because I just blew myself away. While hoarding valuable information, Omidyar has forged relationships with the very same private military contractor that Snowden fought to expose. 2 years after founding The Intercept, Omidyar welcomed a man by the name of Robert Lietzke, Lietzke, to his fellowship program. Lietzke was no small character. He happened to be Snowden's former boss at Booz Allen Hamilton, which is a CI front company as well.
Interesting. And yeah, I'm sorry, finish your thought.
No, I just said, holy shit.
Yeah,
that was my thought.
That's pretty fascinating. And yes, Brady, that's a good distinction to make. I like calling the Republicans communists because they like to project that identity onto the Democrats. So I know it triggers them immensely when I call them Bolshevik communists, because they worship government. And effectively, if you worship the government, you can call it whatever you want: fascism, communism, totalitarianism. Yeah. But anyone who worships the government, and that's what the USAID thing reveals, is that definitively the Republicans absolutely worship government. And the real spectrum, of course, like to your point, is you either are a statist where you think that the government should be superior to the individual, and that's what like the government of Israel has. They're absolutely statists. They're absolutely socialists.
Statist is a great word. When I was running in the libertarian circles full time, we call them all statists. You can't. Yes. Unfortunately, not enough people understand that, and it gets confused with someone like myself who believes in states' rights. But it's a wonderful term because that's what they are.
Yeah,
They want
and then the other end of the spectrum, like anarchy, would be the individual, the sovereign individual over the government, which is what the founding principles of the smart founding fathers were. Not all of them, but the smart ones. So
the ethical ones, shall we say?
The ethical ones, yes, exactly.
So there's a post on Miss Bordalk Inner News. It looks like LinkedIn profile. It says from 4 months ago, today at Microsoft New York office, we launched Media Viability Accelerator, a free web-based platform that allows local news outlets worldwide to support local news outlets. The Media Viability Accelerator enhances financial sustainability for independent media with support from USAID and Microsoft's Democracy Forward initiative. With over 260 outlets already on board, we aim to bolster 2,000 more, all at our expense with USAID money, media organizations and tens of thousands of journalists, helping to ensure millions of citizens stay informed and engaged.
Stay informed and engaged with their
narrative.
With their narratives, yes. Yep.
All right. I've got another screen share for you.
Okay. Get it back up here.
This is from Concordia, the early parts. It's her bio as of 2017. She's got some nice teeth. All right, we know most.
What did he just say? Go ahead.
We know most of the stuff that's above this, but down here we have a paragraph. Bugeaud has consulted in international program design and evaluation for Open Society Institute, George Soros, the Rockefeller Brothers Fund, my favorite villains. If anybody's ever watched me, you know Rockefellers. Everything goes back to Rockefellers for me. The Charles Stewart Mott Foundation, which we're going to jump into here in a second. The Ford Foundation, same people that financed the Nazis. The Research Triangle Institute, which I don't think I'm familiar with, hasn't come across my radar. So if anybody wants to inform us on that, I'm sure it's interesting. And then, of course, the United Nations Center for Human Rights, among others. And if you know anything about the United Nations Human Rights Board, it's pretty much the people who sit on it are the representatives from the most disgusting countries in the world.
To bury their human rights abuses.
Exactly. United Nations. I mean, if Donald Trump does not get the United States out of the UN and get the UN out of the United States in these next 4 years, he will have failed, in my opinion. It's got to go. Yep. WHO is a good start. Paris Climate Agreement's a good start, but the UN's got to go.
And that, did you see the executive order? And this is where, the nuance of like the stuff that I've been digging into for the past 2 years, I think really weighs in because, there's obviously a lot of concern right now across certain segments of the MAGA base that Trump is basically captured. Like he's like a puppet of the Zionist cult. And he's actually using the momentum from that movement, which is very significant in terms of influence and power and money, to decouple us from the UN. He signed a few executive orders where he's pulling out of all these UN programs because, and his excuse is that the UN is anti-Semitic and it's engaging in all this anti-Israel behavior or rhetoric. And so he's actually removing us from all of these programs that are designed ultimately to undermine our sovereignty and take away our autonomy as a nation state. And he's using the Zionist movement as the forcing function to do that. So
yeah, the amount of money, there are trillions of dollars at stake with everything he's doing, and we are basically taking away the gravy train right now in real time over the last 3 weeks. We've talked about this stuff for years. I don't some of us woke up earlier than others, and we all had our different quote unquote red pill moments. But once you start to figure out how this whole gravy train grift works, I mean, it's tough to go to sleep at night, but to see it unwinding and unraveling in real time. When Donald Trump came down the escalator in 2016, I didn't like him. I never watched his show. I never read his book. I don't like New Yorkers a whole lot myself because I had to work with them way too much. I didn't believe him when he said he's going to drain the swamp. And then I saw the swamp go after him like they've never gone after anyone in history. And watching him do this, why did he do it his first 4 years? Well, he was totally hamstrung, but he had 4 years to plan this. And he's got some great people. And I just hope this keeps going. I mean, the swamp's going to fight back. The international syndicate spent centuries building up their power base and implementing all of these institutions and organizations and our sacred institutions. No, they're not sacred at all.
There's nothing sacred about it. Yeah.
That's
the only thing that's sacred in this country are the people and the Bill of Rights. That's it. Nothing else should ever be called sacred in our society other than the Bible, perhaps, and the Bible, Bill of Rights, and the American people. Nothing else is above reproach. Everything else should be scrutinized ad nauseum and basically picked apart. And if it passes the sniff test, great. If it doesn't, get rid of it.
So let me say a couple of things. Your Research Triangle Institute, I just had to look up real quick because I came across that when I was researching in North Carolina after the hurricane. I came across in looking at investments in North Carolina and who had an agenda there. And I just wanted to make sure that it's the same one. It does look like it is. There was an article that I found that was written in 2023 that says the Biden-Harris administration selects Research Triangle Institute to receive $100 million to fund environmental justice projects across the region. It goes on to talk about how this organization has been pivotal in all kinds of different, let's just say, government investments. Okay. So yes, they are very much in on this, but I also wanted to point out something else. There's a medium.com article that was written in September 2024 that says 10 ways USAID is building, defending democracy and human rights. This article says, this is just the subtitle, read about programs in Georgia, Indonesia, Nigeria, Ukraine, Kenya, Serbia, Laos, Ghana, and Honduras.
Yeah, okay, that's going to segue right into my next screen share.
Okay.
So let's oops. Stop sharing. I had to present
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Can you name those countries again?
Sure. Georgia, Indonesia, Nigeria, Ukraine, Kenya, Serbia, Laos, Ghana, and Honduras.
Gotcha. Okay.
For those who haven't been following the three
I'll
of us,
give you the link in the private chat, Gordon.
There is a litany of every single one of those countries has seen conflict that the United States has, or United States corporations have profited from. All right. So here's another fun share. I'm going to the Internews website, and we're going to play around in there. Colonel, can you put that one up?
Sure.
All right. Here's their own website, and I'm going into their history first. Founded in 1982 in San Francisco. Funded by the Kendall Foundation. Something to look up. They do something called Space Bridge, a two-way satellite link up between Soviet youth in Moscow and Americans. This is prior to the Cold War ending. So this is kind of the Radio Free Europe idea of basically getting American ideas behind the Iron Curtain. They moved to Arcata, California. 1990. Internews shifts its focus from producing international television programs to supporting the nascent. Is that how you say it? Nascent?
Nascent, maybe. Yeah, I think it's nascent, so whatever. Doesn't matter.
Thank you. It's one of those words I read a million times and I've never said it out loud. And I always know the pronunciation. Happens to me all the time. To support the non-governmental media in Eastern Europe and the former Soviet Union in 1990. Right as the United States' whole foreign policy shift is happening from the Cold War to regime change. Very interesting. So they're there at day one.
Yep.
They opened a first field office in Russia in 92. Oh, here's an interesting. Internews and the Jerusalem Film Institute launched a project to develop Palestinian television.
That's fascinating.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And then you think about Netanyahu's comments that he made in 2002 when he testified as a private citizen, because that was when he wasn't prime minister. It was between terms. He had just ended his first term as prime minister, and he was about to begin his next one after the next election. But he said his advice was we needed to invade, as the United States, Iraq and murder Saddam Hussein. That's what he said. He said, if you murder Saddam Hussein, instant peace in the Middle East. Invade Iran and invade Afghanistan. And he said, my advice to you is to broadcast Melrose Place into Iran, because it will then demoralize them, but also promote degenerate values and basically undermine their cultural values. So it makes you wonder, like, what exactly were they broadcasting on Palestinian television?
So, do you know what one of the most fascinating things is that you just said? When I went to Italy in 1990, do you know what the most famous show was on Italian television? Baywatch.
I was going to say Dallas.
Baywatch. I was like, are you kidding me? That's like the worst show in all of television. It was everywhere. That's exactly what they're doing, Ghost.
Yeah.
I wonder if it was a degeneracy trying to soft porn in these countries. Yeah. All right, so keep going here. In 94, they're in Sarajevo. They with Sarajevo under siege by the Yugoslavia.
You mean when we were blowing the entire country up?
Yes.
Okay.
Under siege. Yeah, that's what they meant. With the Soros Foundation, they run the Balkan Media Network, an early version of the electronic bulletin board and email system that connects 250 independent media organizations as well as ordinary citizens in the former Yugoslavia with the rest of the world. Now, 2 points I'd love to make here. The internet was a DARPA creation, U.S. military funded. They gave it to the rest of the world for free because they knew they could use it for their own purposes to destabilize governments around the world. And I got to give a hat tip to Mike Benz because I'm stealing his narrative here. But in 2016, after the Brexit vote and Trump's election, they recognized that they've lost control of the media, of the internet. We are the media now. This is, as I like to talk about, we are living through Gutenberg 2.0. We now have free exchange of ideas, and that's why the mainstream media trust is at an all-time low, et cetera. So that's going on. Right there is when they were using the internet to their advantage to destabilize any place they wanted it and do the regime change. One of the other points I wanted to make earlier is you see Soros' name pop up all over the place, and everyone, he's a billionaire, multi-billionaire. The way he made his money is on currency speculation. So he's working hand in hand with our State Department and CIA all over the world for the last 4 decades, knowing which regimes are going to fall and which ones aren't, because he's taken USAID money to help facilitate that change, and he's shorting their currencies. And that's how that mother made his money.
Yep.
And that's also why he's banned in many countries, including his home country of Hungary.
I don't think he's making. So I've come to the conclusion, for people like Soros and the Rockefellers and stuff like that, and the Zuckerbergs, the requirement, just like when I did the research on BCCI, in order to be installed as a dictator, you had to have your account set up at BCCI, right? That's how they money laundered into and out of, and how they controlled you. They controlled you by that banking system. The foundations is part and parcel of you becoming a billionaire. You are being used in their money laundering operation. You are going to be our currency manipulator. You are going to set up this foundation, and we are going to use your foundation as a CIA front. And that's true with the Ford Foundation. It's true with the Rockefeller Foundation. It's true with the Carnegie Foundation. It's true with the Zuckerberg Foundation. the Microsoft, Bill and Melinda, the Clintons. I think every one of these people's foundations are part of this entire infrastructure that is set up to facilitate the money laundering and the control.
It's pretty close, pretty accurate. It's pretty close to how I would describe it.
Yeah,
So,
I'm
go
not at all convinced, by the way, that Soros is still alive. I need to see some proof of life. I think they've been trotting his son out now for a couple of years, trying to, I think, build up his public credibility so that they can finally make the announcement that Soros is dead, and probably has been for a while.
Did his son marry Huma Abedin
Yes.
yet?
Yep.
They're not. She's
They
10
are-
years,
they are-
she's
they
10
are
years
married.
older than him.
She's definitely his handler. I mean, she's got to be his handler,
That's
right?
what I was just going to say. She
Yeah,
is
I mean-
definitely his handler. So someone, I think it was Liza Cousinette, said that there is a Russian thing that was English translated that said, like, talking about the executive order that Trump just signed on 20 January about the foreign aid, that says that organization that I mentioned earlier, the media velocity accelerator, was included in his executive order, that it was to be immediately unfunded / suspended. That's crazy.
All right.
Yeah, that is.
Going back to this timeline, we got through Sarajevo. 95, you're founded in Paris. 97, expansion in Africa. UN Tribunal for Rwanda. These are Forrest Gump.
Ghost, didn't we just talk about Rwanda?
Yeah, I actually was going to do a screen share in a minute about Rwanda, but yes, please continue.
Let me just finish the timeline and I'll turn it over to you. 98, they're in expansion in Asia. So now we have them in Indonesia. 2001, they launched the privately funded Global Internet Policy Initiative. This is interesting. Internews is an incredible organization waging a persistent battle and outperforming anyone else in media development in failing states like Afghanistan.
Just before 9/11, where we go to Afghanistan.
Uh-huh. Ahmed, God, what a freaking coinkydink. I'm glad you caught that, because that, I mean, if that's not right there, if that's not right there in your face, I don't know what is.
Right there in your face.
Goodness. 22, they're in Kabul to help establish local professional media. 2004, Internews Earth Journalism Networks, now we're getting into climate stuff, launches to provide journalists in developing countries with the skills to cover the environment more effectively. That's climate alarmism propaganda coming straight from the United Nations.
And this will coincide with the WWF and their invasion into Africa under the guise of climate, taking over all of these and setting up all of these national park systems, and all for the green initiative, while they're at the same time building eco-friendly hotels for all their buddies to watch all the local indigenous people that they kicked out of the forest dance for them.
Oh, and you're going to see that again in the next point, 2005. They go over there to the Indian Ocean tsunami in Indonesia and Sri Lanka. It's disaster journalism or disaster capitalism. Exactly what you just said.
Yes, exactly.
And yeah, it's on everyone's mind after North Carolina, Maui, et cetera, in LA.
Correct.
Disaster capitalism might just be a real thing.
It is definitely a real thing. They create the disaster, chaos, so they can control the aftermath.
All right, so continuing. Unbelievable stuff. Now you guys see why I was so excited this morning when I started unpeeling this orange. I mean, it just leads to everything we've talked about. 2005, the Global Forum, now we're going global, for media development, organized by Internews and 17 other organizations. I'd like to get a list of those 17. Anyone? Meets in Amman, Jordan, uniting hundreds of media support NGOs, journalists, broadcasters, and activists from 97 countries. Skip 2008. Every human has rights. start some of these code words so we know where these guys are coming from. Earth
Well, except for
journalism,
Trump
climate.
supporters.
What's that?
Except for Trump supporters.
Yeah. Earth journalism for climate change reporting. Haiti earthquake 2010. Should I pause there? Because we all know all the USAID money that went to the Clinton Foundation for that.
Yep.
Anyone want to comment on Epstein?
Keep going.
Oh, they're there in the Arab Spring. The Arab Spring brings to focus and promise to cause a free media in the Middle East while longstanding. They were there. They're the ones who were over. Yes. This is
but that's how people don't understand. These are the people on the ground that are telling the lies. Remember, we were talking about all of the staged photographs of in Syria of the aftermath of the chemicals and how the people come out with perfectly hairdo that supposedly had been a prisoner for the last, 6 months or whatever. These are the people that are capturing all of their talking points to spin around the world in an accelerated fashion in order to control the narrative.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And basically they can take the same event and depending on the audience, the intended audience, they can spin it a different way. Correct. So they can show the same footage to Americans and then spin it one way and then show that same footage to people in the Middle East, spin it a completely different way. And basically get both sides angry at one another. And that's effectively what psychological warfare is.
100%.
Yep.
All right. Continuing. God, the Arab Spring one just blows me away because we've been hammering that home for so long. Exactly. And just so you guys know, the Arab Spring was exactly why the whole Russian reset, with Clinton's State Department, the Obama Clinton State Department, we're talking about the Russian reset, and they did the whole, technological military joint venture in Skolkovo, and that all ended because of the Arab Spring. Because Putin said, "Wait a minute, you guys you're going to pull this crap on my doorstep. I don't think I want to play nice with you anymore." That was it.
Well, go ahead, Gordon.
Well, because up until that point, Putin came into power in 2000, and as he explained to Oliver Stone, and they did 4 interviews between 2016 and late 2017, I believe. And as he told Oliver Stone, he spent the first basically 10 years in office trying to rekindle a relationship with the West. He was trying to build the bridge, right? And George Bush Sr., he said, was the one who actually shut the whole thing down. When George Bush Jr., when W was president, Putin said he had to go to their ranch and speak to George Bush Sr. and ask him permission to do this collaborative missile defense system development program. He wanted to develop anti-ballistic missile technology together, and that would be symbolic as, hey, we'll have the same technology so that we will deter future conflict because we'll have the exact same technology to defend against missiles in the future. And George Bush Sr. told him to go jump off a bridge, basically. And so now Russia, at least narratively, has a better anti-ballistic missile defense system than the West does because Putin said, fine, we'll go do it on our own. And because of our own malfeasance and corruption, they've been able to, at least narratively, we could have this technology stowed away somewhere, but they have better ballistic technology now than we do.
So I want to make a point on the Skolkovo thing too. None of this flies if you don't have near competitors. That's the whole Operation Gladio chaos and strategy of tension. So, they transitioned from the communist boogeyman to the terrorist boogeyman in 91 when basically the Soviet Union was dismantled, right? Because you have to have a boogeyman in order for them to psychologically terrorize us. So they did it with the Soviet Union for decades, and then it transitioned into terrorism. Well, what they found in the Skolkovo, when you start reading through there, to me, from a military perspective, that Russia was not as close of a competitor as what they wanted them to be in order to continue the need to have them as a boogeyman, right?
The justification for the spending.
So you create Skolkovo and they just mysteriously get some of our highly technical information because you are giving it to them in their country with all of these defense contractors there. And this is the exact same thing that was happening with the Loral company, Loral, who was during the Clinton administration given China all of our space technology that was actually fined millions of dollars for doing that. Because if they don't share that technology to create near peer competition, they can't continue with their theft of all of our resources.
Yeah, that's where the Russians got their hypersonic technology from originally, and they developed it and made it better than we had.
Yes.
All right, this gets good. We're up to 2012. Independent media in Libya. Did we ever have any chaos going on in Libya? Anybody remember?
Yeah, that would be the whole Benghazi thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
But Internews is there
to capture it all and tell us that it was what was it? A video?
Okay. Yeah. The official narrative was that it was like a video that got these people out into the streets,
and that story was accelerated through people like Internews.
Yes, correct. That's what it would appear.
So 2013, they moved their headquarters to London. I don't think that's significant. They win a largest tender.
From where?
Paris. From
So
Paris.
It is very significant because from my timeline, everything starts and ends with the city of London. So keep going.
They do a big project in 2014 in South Sudan. Very stable place. There's been no, turmoil there. In 2014, in response to Typhoon Haiyan in the Philippines, I was in the Philippines the following year. 2015 is when I went. Interesting. It's singled out by the UK Independent Commission for Aid Impact for highly cost-effective, disproportionately positive impacts. It's disaster capitalism.
So can I add that Macy Blue in the comments said there was a student uprising that overthrew Suharto in Indonesia in 1998. And 1998 is when you were saying that they were active in Indonesia.
Nice. Who gave that find?
Macy Blue.
Great job, Macy. That's fucking awesome. And you can't make this stuff up.
No.
Yeah. Well, and just to be clear, as I see it, the Arab Spring, which is basically you had every single government and you had every single country in the Middle East going from across North Africa and the Middle East, all at once experience, like in the same few days, mass uprisings, public, like the same thing we saw in America in the summer of 2020 happened there all at once.
Well, Gordon, real quick.
Except for Qatar and Lebanon. Yeah.
Let's say they weren't mass uprisings. It was the appearance of mass uprisings.
Exactly.
So they have,
yes.
It's the same thing we saw in the Summer of Love with the BLM riots. You take a city of 2 million people and you get maybe 10,000 people in the streets, and it looks like it's this mass uprising in the streets, and the news media is going to cover it with the right angles to make. But you're talking about less than 0.5% of the city's population are actually on the streets doing this BLM stuff. 10,000 people looks like a lot when it's filmed properly, but it's certainly.
And all you need to do that is you basically just need some very, very experienced, highly trained operatives to organize prior to the event, organize like groups that some of these people may be paid, some of them may be acting in earnest, but you get those people highly organized. You get them to plan like an event where they're all going to show up publicly. You then use your media influence, your media network to promote the event like online on social media, all that. That then gets useful idiots out with them, and the useful idiots all want to feel like they're part of something, right? And maybe they have real gripes and real reasons to be, real grievances, but they're being used. And so you can easily get 10,000 people out into the street for any cause with the right narrative, the right rhetoric, and the right operatives on the street. And as long as the operatives are there waiting for the people to show up and then can give them direction and give them organization and make it look a certain way, and then you use camera angles and filming to make it look way bigger than it really is, it's very easy to like present the optics that this is all very real.
And the news outlet you're talking about, this is what Internews has been doing for the last.
That's what I was going to say. Internews would be the vehicle to do that, and they're everywhere.
Bingo.
So let me just say, Macy Blue said she lived there during the event in Indonesia.
Wow.
Also, Craig Mutley said that Gaddafi was killed because he was going to gold-based money in order to trade oil in only gold among a handful of other countries, basically kind of the bricks before bricks kind of concept.
Yeah, that's accurate for the that's pretty close to being accurate for the reason that Gaddafi got taken down. There's a couple other reasons to go with it, but that was a big one.
Yeah,
that was a big. Well, if you look at there's only like I used to be 7, but there's only a handful of nations around the world who are not part of they're not signed on to the World Bank, and among those, these are all what we call enemy countries. One of them is Venezuela, the other one was Libya. There's a few others, Iran. The people that are outside of the Anglo-American rules-based order and their banking system, these are all pariahs. So that's actually a very, very astute observation.
Hey, Brady, I'm probably about to, my kids are waking up from their naps, so I'm probably about to get kicked off here. Let me real quick share my screen, and then y'all can resume. I might just have to drop off suddenly, and I'll run through this real quick. Maybe it will inform the conversation, and I'll stick around as long as I can. But
can you let me? I'm trying to share it, but it's not. Hold on, just a second. There it is. All right.
Okay, so I want to talk about like I've been digging on, and I think you might be in this timeline you're going through. I'm curious if the Democratic Republic of Congo is going to show up in 2018. We'll keep an eye on that, or maybe 2017. We'll keep an eye on that. But I've been digging on that because we talk about Rwanda. Rwanda is this tiny country right here, and it's a regime change base of operations, I believe. And right now what's happening is they have this organization, M23, which is kind of like an ISIS adjacent organization, or at least a CIA connected organization. It would appear has come into the DRC, captured the city of Goma. They're moving south and taking more territory. And this blue area that you're seeing here is the tin region. You have the copper belt down here. The DRC has it's the most rich area for rare earth minerals. Its estimated market cap is $24.5 trillion. And this is where the DRC is located, in the middle of Africa. And this is all connected to France. This was originally, French Africa. So I'm still digging on the Rwanda stuff and what's going on there. It all appears connected to what Trump did there in 2017 with Executive Order 13818. Here come my dogs. But this is where it led me. And this is where I would turn this over to you, Brady, is this organization, the General Society of Belgium, which is not just a bank, but it's considered, according to Wikipedia, the most important company that ever existed in Belgium. It's also the first universal bank, and it became a holding company in 1934. But it would appear that this bank is extremely important. I think now it's known as Tractebel or Suez Tractebel. They merged it several times with Tractebel, which is an engineering firm, and the Suez Company, which is the company that built the Suez Canal in the 1860s. But it is absolutely, it's a Paris-based company, but it's absolutely has deep banking ties to London, and it is all over Africa. Basically, it's very, very significant in Africa and the mineral rights in Africa. And so everything that we've seen Trump and Putin do, which has effectively been freezing the financial assets of organizations and individuals who are engaging in human trafficking, child trafficking as it relates to mining operations in Africa, and then stripping those rights away in British court, and then putting them up for sale. And then, the oil barons from the UAE, from Saudi Arabia, who are allies with Trump, and I have the receipts on that, are coming in and buying up those mineral rights. That is all, I believe, why Rwanda is now in the DRC trying to take back these areas. And you may recall last May we had those coup operations, which I think we did a show on that, talking about that.
We did, and I'm putting that link in the Rumble right now. The three of us did that. We talked about the Congo, so that's in Rumble.
Yeah. This guy, Christian Malonga, Christian Malonga, him and his son led a team into the DRC, tried to overthrow the government back in May. This is an American with ties to Israel and ties to the IDF and Mossad, who I believe it was them who sent them in there. And he was killed. His son was taken prisoner, and all 37 of the prisoners they took of these guys were all sentenced to death back in, I think, September.
So the 1934 correlation is basically when the King of Belgium, if I'm not mistaken, gave the Congo was a Belgium colony. And
yes.
It was a personal possession for 350 years of the King of Belgium, not even of the country. And he pocketed all of the wealth that they extracted personally, and then basically gave the colony over to the country of Belgium. And then, of course, we all know what they did to Lumumba, who was going to be the first successful president of the Congo. And that track to tell, when I did the research into the Congo, that's like the Bechtel. Everything that's like our Bechtel as far as a defense contractor for Belgium. If you look at where the engineering and all of the other stuff that they do all over Africa, they would be something very similar to what Americans know about Bechtel.
Yeah, if anybody wants to read the prehistory of that prior to the coups, there's an amazing book. It's very dark, called King Leopold's Ghost.
Yeah,
that talks about that at the turn of the 20th century. I read that more than a decade ago before I knew everything about this story that I know today, and it's pretty damning. Yeah. It's a pretty damning story.
But basically, that beltway of rare earth minerals in the Congo, there's a whole collection of metals that are used in these modern batteries, like your cell phone, your laptop, any electronic. Uses all kinds of different metals. Lithium would be one, cobalt would be another, but there's also coltan. There's like nickel, tin. There's a number of others that are increasingly rare, and some of the only mines we have of these really, really rare earth minerals are in Central Africa. And so whoever controls that region is going to be very powerful in this emerging battery energy age that we're entering. So I think keeping an eye on that is really important. But this, just to put a bow on this for you, Brady, this company seems very important to dig on because they have a very, very unique history where it's a holding company that has everything from an engineering firm to construction firms that produce the biggest projects on earth, like the biggest dams, the biggest whatever, canals, everything. They also have railway companies. They have, investment banking companies. They have diamond and mining, everything you could think of. They basically have under this umbrella, and there's a lot of shell companies involved. There's a lot of countries involved that, I think would stir your imagination when you start listing out some of the countries that are involved in this. But it's all based in Paris. I mean, it's all based in Belgium, rather, with offices in Paris. And it all seems to be, as far as I can tell, connected to whatever's going on in the DRC. So this is something, and like you said, it does go back to Leopold. It also goes back to, just digging into their history, the guys who invented the earliest arc lamp, which is like the earliest electric light sources that they used in street lamps in Europe in like the 1800s. These guys were involved in buying out those companies and then acquiring the IP and utilizing it.
Reminds you of the Rockefeller Empire.
Exactly. Yeah. And this isn't like a company that I had heard of before. So this is like very under the radar, but considering their mass, like presence, I mean, they seem to be everywhere. and they're so under the radar, that definitely raises some red flags to me. So, but Lemire International, that's one of the big companies that's under the subsidiary Suez Canal Company, Tractable. So there's just some vocabulary words.
It's funny you bring them up because it just came across I'm going to do a deeper dive because I'm rereading Carol Quigley's The Anglo-American Establishment right this minute, and the name it pops up there when he's going through right around the turn of the 20th century. So I will do a deep dive with you on that one, and we'll circle back on that.
Cool.
Let's try to finish up with
run through that timeline real quick, and if I have to drop off, I will. But keep going through the timeline.
All right. Let me just find it again. Here we go. So in 2017, they do something called the Listening Post Collective. I have no idea what that is. Somebody do that homework, please. 2017, the United for News Coalition, led by internews in collaboration with the World Economic Forum, is established. Say no more. Once you say WEF, to transform local media markets around the world so that communities everywhere can benefit from the positive impact of high quality news and information. 2019, they implement a strategic plan for 2020 to 2025. 5 healthy elements of a healthy information environment. That's just newspeak for propaganda. 2018, their first United Kingdom program called Supporting Community Media. All right, here we get to 2020 to get all into COVID. When the COVID-19 pandemic hit, Internews quickly transitioned to an entirely remote workforce and pivoted its projects to serve the health information needs of communities worldwide within the 100 countries in which we work. We provided small grants to help media outlets stay alive and assembled a diverse group of media advisors with experience in more than 20 countries to provide mentoring and training to interviewing partners, including journalists and other content creators. What they're really saying there is they are at the tip of the spear of the entire COVID censorship industrial complex. They're telling people these people, you watch the entire world government, everybody's health departments around the world in lockstep accepted a bunch of stuff that turned out to be absolutely hogwash. Masks work. Nobody questioned the guy in China falling down from COVID, that video. All the hysteria all over the world, Internews was involved in 100 countries around the world.
So you wouldn't be surprised at all then to know that Listening Post Collective has approved vocabulary words called news deserts, civic engagement, civic power, civic media design, civic media, civic information, Black, Indigenous, and other people of color. That's BIPOC. That's going to be a term that they approve to be used. The term equity and the term information gardens, equitable media. And equitable media was first defined by Ford Foundation as part of the Media 2020 report, investing in equitable news and media projects.
I'm going to start throwing stuff at the window right now.
It's farcical how you just you dig into this stuff this isn't like a deep dive we're doing. This is just kind of we're going on their website and literally reading their about us history, and all the names that you would expect to show up are just right there front and center.
This is basically Wikipedia level stuff.
Yeah.
It's right there. It's right
definitely Wikipedia level stuff. Yeah, this is stuff that they are publishing and putting out to promote their own image, to promote themselves. They're like, Ford Foundation, World Economic Forum, guys, totally.
I am putting on my Revolutionary War hat right now for this.
It's
unbelievable.
It's such a joke. What a joke.
But it's important to go to those websites, to your point, Gordon, because this is how they get their funding. They're
Yeah.
going to be telling you exactly what they're going to do in order to qualify for the USAID money.
Yep.
It's always under the guise of some kind of socially justifiable cause, where
Yeah.
only 10% of it goes to where it's supposed to be going.
And if you're an influencer who doesn't also happen to be, you know, like a CIA agent or like an asset of the intelligence community already, if you want access to that money, you have to grovel at their feet and comply with their messaging and, you know, go with their talking points, and they will give you bags and bags of money. Which once you're on the take, you know, it's like they're going to rug pull your income unless you stick to the messaging. So that's how they basically create like a populist alternative media information space.
Well, this is why what Doge is doing is so important. They're unraveling decades or even longer of this stuff in a heartbeat, because they've got the ability to actually follow the money.
Oh my God! Hold on! Stop the presents. Bridget and Cousinage just sent me a web archive article from 2021 that says it's the name of it is Taliban won't let the people of Afghanistan hear their own voices. And it's from that bitch we started off with, GM Burgolt, or whatever her name is. Listen to the first freaking sentence. 20 years ago, Afghanistan was an information desert.
Yeah, an information desert, meaning like we didn't have our narrative deployed there.
That's exactly right.
We just took it full circle.
Yeah.
The other point I wanted to make, that was a great interruption. I'm so glad you did that, Colonel. It's always about you can always follow the money. You can always follow that. And the next area I want to see Doge, I want them to go after the Pentagon. I want them to go after HHS, but they absolutely have to audit the NSF, the National Science Foundation, because it's exactly what Gordon just said. If you control the money, the National Science Foundation basically is the one who finances every major university research center in America and even beyond the States. They have got a preconceived notion of what they want, what the conclusion of the research should be. And if you don't come up with that conclusion, your funding is cut off.
Correct. They
have bastardized science. The Colonel and I did a show on this more than a year ago, and we talked about Robert Maxwell and how he completely co-opted and manipulated, got a monopoly on peer-reviewed journals and everything like that. They've been bastardizing.
That's a great dig. That's a great rabbit hole.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll get back out of that rabbit hole, but I had to throw it out there because of what you said.
I actually need to jump off. Unfortunately, my kids are about to come running in here and disrupt the whole thing.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah, of course. Let's do this again. We should do this again.
Absolutely,
for sure.
We're gonna have to.
All right. Well, have a good day.
Good to see you, buddy.
Yep. Later.
All right. Are we done?
Nah, it's a few more things. Let me get back on my screen. I want to play around with this website for about another 5 minutes. There's a few more points to be made.
Okay, and then I'm going to have to run.
Yep, this is going. I know, but this has been awesome.
This was not an hour.
I thought it was going to be an hour.
Keep going.
So we got the COVID stuff. It's absolutely nonsense. They're dealing with BBC. They're starting to do something called Film Aid. They acquire something called NewsGain, a leading consultancy to provide expertise. Blah blah blah. You get the general picture. More COVID. More COVID stuff to fight disinformation and misinformation. They're getting funding for that. Absolutely ridiculous. But you start playing around with this website. So that's their history. Go to their people. Oh, we can't find that exact URL. They've scrubbed it.
Nobody exists.
I saw an archive somewhere, I think in that Twitter spread, that we may be able to find that. So I will post that if I can find it. Donors and supporters is interesting. Let me get rid of this cookie thing. If you go to the foundations, who we're going to do a whole lot. Look at all these foundations. Cisco Systems. You want to guess if some of our favorites are on there? And the Rockefellers right here. 3 of them. Go figure.
Yep.
Can't make this stuff up. And then you look at the corporations and nonprofits. You got Facebook, of course, Google, big supporter of them.
Hold on, let me look at that. Keep going up.
You want to hear?
I'm just looking. Okay, Howard. I just wanted to see what the rest of them were. Okay, got it.
There's only a few that stood up. This company 100 is interesting. We'll get to that another time. And of course, their headquarters locations: Arcata, Bangkok, Kiev, Ukraine, London, Nairobi, etc.
Wouldn't you think that's weird that it would be in Kiev, except for the fact that it's obviously a lot more than what we all think it is?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the launch into Russia. It's all of Eastern Europe. It's everything.
Some fun stuff here with our areas of expertise. Jump down to the environment. Of course, it's going to be all about helping journalists cover the environment more effectively. I want to take that class. Earth journalism, clean air. I'm okay for clean air.
I would vomit.
Women and girls. What are they talking about?
They don't even know what women and girls are. They are literally trying to erase women and girls, but they use them as a talking point. The same way with blacks. They have subjugated and enslaved Africa, but used blacks as a bludgeoning for everybody else.
Correct. Government and transparency, which is the exact opposite. Their manipulation of the language is amazing. We also have a rich practice in data journalism. Do I even want to click on this? I'm afraid to. Should I do it?
Do it.
Internews trains journalists to help address injustice, inequality, and discrimination against marginalized. Enough.
Yeah, that's that BIPOC thing.
Yeah. Where do we work? Look
all
at these
over
places.
the freaking world.
Look at all these
let's see. Look at all of, so the past programs, current programs are all in blue. Oh my God, that looks just like the coup map. That's the coup map.
That's got to be a coincidence. It's got to be.
That's literally the coup map.
I'm not arguing.
Well, it is. There's Indonesia. There's all of the African countries. There's the Congo. There's and well, yeah, because look, all of the light blue. It's the entire freaking African continent, except for the one. And then you've got all of South America, except for up there where it shows basically Venezuela that they couldn't overthrow, and then British Guyana, because it shows in the light blue where they were in Guyana because they overthrew that country twice. I'm telling you, that's the coup map.
Check this out. Places they've never been: Greenland and Canada. Have they been in the news?
And England, where they're headquartered. Imagine that.
Uh-huh. Absolutely amazing.
They have not been to any of the English or the British, except for Australia. They do have a light blue there because they overthrew the government there once.
Oh boy. Resources. What do we have here? Filter by topic. What kind of topics do we have? Disinformation, misinformation. I want to read this. Information matters. Internews, greater internet freedom. This is all about censorship. When they say they're over there in Senegal, internet shutdowns on the society. I think we found a player.
Okay, so I think Bridget or Cousin It found the archived board. So I am going to put it in the comments so people can cut and paste it.
Can you put it up on screen for us too?
Well, maybe. I'm not good at that. Hold on.
This is why it's so much fun to do research like this, live in real time with all of our great friends and they're also awesome researchers, because we get so much more done when we do it this way.
Okay, can you see it?
Yep.
All right. How about that? Here is the U.S. Board of Directors. Chapreet Aurora.
Don't know her.
And if you click on that, let's see if it takes us anywhere. Okay. India Media. How about that? Oh, Vice. Oh, Discovery Channel. New York Times. Gosh, I wonder which way she leans. CEO, Vice. Oh, Oxford, of course. Yeah. Ernst and Young too. Man, she's flipping in all of the squares here.
She checks some boxes.
Stockholm. Oh, there's our Swedish angle. There's always a Swedish angle too. Always. All right. So
all right. Who else do we have?
Okay. Ann Avis. Let's see what she did. Ann Avis. Oh, San Francisco. She is in Montana Free Press, Tenworks, Bozeman, Montana, Palo Alto, California.
Yeah, her husband rings a bell. Somebody look up what her husband does. It's probably that might be the Avis rent-a-car family.
Shoot! I bet you're right. Okay, and this guy is sub brands at the New York Times.
The Guardian's in there.
Yep. Mother Jones. How about that?
That's another one that'll be shut down without the USAID money.
Yeah. So this is like crazy.
Is this their board of directors?
Yeah.
Oh, look at the one on the far right here.
Okay, hold on. Let's get to this guy. So Walt Disney, of course. Hulu. He joined Disney from Al Jazeera. Oh shit, that's so funny.
See that one right there? It's right there. Simone Otis Coxey.
Uh-huh.
Oh, the Coxies have shown up in my research lately when I'm doing the skull and bone stuff. We do need to click on that.
All right, I'm clicking on it right now.
Yep, that last name just jumped off the screen at me.
All right. Come on. They may be messing with archive now.
I don't know if they can. Are you getting a delay on your end?
It won't let me open that one. I'll come back to that one. Hold on. Let me see if I can open this guy. Oh, yes, they can. They shut the entire website down. And I lost all of my account, my bookmarks, all of the research I'd done for Operation Gladio with tabs in it. Yeah. I lost all of it.
Really?
Yeah. They shut the whole website down. Flashpoint, several boards to do with logistics and cybersecurity. He works on nonprofit boards of poverty, media, and education. Oh, and look at that. He directed the Asia program for the National Endowment for Democracy. Oh, my God. Holy crap. Okay.
If you scroll down a bit, you're going to get a Kessler.
Okay, hold on. Oh, here she's coming up now. All right. So she working with nonprofit media from local to global, co-founder, a director of Cal Matters. They've had several of them have had that. National Trust for Local News, Human Rights Watch, on the advisory board of UC Berkeley. The Pluralism Fund, the Civil Society of Pakistan and Iran, the World Affairs Council. Now, this is a big deal because that World Affairs Council is another CIA front, and there's a whole bunch of them. Co-founder of Blanc and Otis Public Relations, and we know what public relations do. Okay. Delaney. CEO of Charter Media. Senior editor of New York Times, The Information, co-founder, Quartz, served as CEO. Prior to Quartz, he was at the Wall Street Journal. He has covered internet news for Google, Twitter, and Facebook. Smart Money Magazine, TV producer in Montreal, a degree from Yale. He was on the CFR. Yeah, nothing to see there. They all have the same pedigree, I notice.
All right, so go back to our friend Simone Coates.
Uh-huh.
Her husband is a guy by the name of Tench Coates. And that traces back to a very old Revolutionary War family. The original Tench Coates was an American political economist and delegate for the Pennsylvania to the Continental Congress in 1788 and 89. That's how far back they go. But her husband of the same name was a big venture capitalist, made a lot of money in Silicon Valley, and they are big Democrat
Funders.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So we're at David Hoffman. He co-founded, let's see, Internews was co-founded by Hoffman in 1982.
Okay. So we're still on board.
So it says that he has written articles for the New York Times, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, International Herald Tribune, Foreign Affairs, Science, Christian Monitor, blah, blah, blah. He's testified in front of the House and Senate. He's a co-founder of Global Forum for Media Development. That is another basic CIA front that he's, let's see, from 87 to 90, he was a project manager for a TV series called Capital to Capital, for which he won an Emmy. It was produced by ABC and Soviet State Television. So he was part of the crafting of the narrative that as the Soviet Union fell, they were going to, quote unquote, transfer to capitalism, which was vulture capitalism and the stealing of all of the. So he crafted the narrative in which Broward and Safar and the Hermitage Capital and all of those went in and took advantage of, is what that just said.
Is he related to Reid Hoffman?
I don't know.
I'm going to find out right now. What's his first name?
David.
Give me 1 second.
All right. So we're going to go on to Richard Kessler. Over 40 years of senior level foreign service. Oh, and national security advisor roles. He worked with the staff. Oh, he was a staff director on the Senate Committee for Homeland Security and Government Affairs. Of course he was. He was also a staff director on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. He helped rewrite the Foreign Assistance Act in 1961. I'm
getting no relation to Reid and David Hoffman.
Okay.
Grok doesn't think they're related. I'll accept that for now.
Okay. He also dealt with East Asia, Pacific, South Asia, and UN peacekeeping. Oh my gosh, in Vietnam and Cambodia and East Timor. Imagine that.
Is that Kessler? Is that Kessler you're on right now?
Yes.
Yeah, well, that thing came up earlier in the show. We knew that was.
Yeah. He also had to do with the International Affairs and School of International Services.
Oh, look down there. We got the Carnegie Endowment.
The Carnegie Endowment. Oh, and he worked with Marcos' dictatorship on ending it, which would have been a coup.
The Philippines again.
The Philippines again.
Whoa.
National and Strategic Studies is a big deal too.
And Yale University Press.
And Yale University Press. All right. So
what secret society comes from Yale?
Skull and Bones.
Gee, maybe we should do a show on that. I've got to wrap up here. This is
there's a whole bunch of them. And then you have the UK Board of Trustees. Y'all need to look through this and tell us if you find, because there's a lot of cross-pollination, and then they have a Global Leadership Council. So this is one of those organizations where the cross pollination of narratives gives birth to actual media narratives.
Yeah, and when you go into these boards, just remember to look up these people's spouses, whether it's their husband or their wife, because that sometimes leads to a lot of nuggets. Anybody who wants to do this research, please tag me on X if you find anything good. I'm pretty responsive, and the Colonel is too. What we just unpacked is one small avenue. People talk about, oh, gee, the Rothschilds rule the world. Well, no, they don't. It's their wealth has been diluted for generations, but there's so many moving parts in this Game of Thrones, and there's so many layers to it. I mean, maybe there's a big boy table with like 6 or 7 families in the multinational corporations, but these are all the players. It's the Praetorian Guard. You're seeing it unravel right in front of our eyes in real time. They've been using our money to run the world, and it's going to stop. I think it's actually happening in our lifetime, it's an amazing time to be alive. And we got to keep on digging, though. We got to expose all of it.
Yeah. So Bridget says that they also have a youth program.
Of course they do.
All of them do. That was the other thing that I wanted to say before Gordon got off. You guys, when Gordon was talking about having the boots on the ground and the overthrows and the incitement and all of the stuff, when Brady was talking about all of the different timelines of this organization, if you guys have not looked into the Albert Einstein Institute, they are the training for the jackboots on the ground. I was flabbergasted. They brag about it all on their homepage. They actually have videos of them doing it. They claim responsibility for most of the coups and getting the people out in the street to do the media shots and stuff like that. And then they ramp up the media exposés and all of these things. But the Albert Einstein Institute has a colonel from the Special Forces branch that was trained in psychological operations to do these regime change. They have a guy that he's since passed away, as I understand it, that the videos of him still explaining how it's all done. They have one video of like 6 different people from 6 different countries that led the initiatives to get the students out on the ground to affect these regime change. It blew my mind.
Big thanks to some of our people in the Rumble chat. SR711 dropped some really good information exposing the star of our show and their connections with California, my old home state. And Donnie Vision had some good comments as well. Number of really good comments. So thank you, everybody, for helping us with this on-air live research deep dive into something I suspected was always there, but now we got the details.
Okay. Well, and thanks for the phone call, Brady. This has been a lot of fun, and I'm glad we were able to share it with everybody and get their feedback instantaneously, because if they can do it, we can do it too.
Awesome. Thanks for hosting.
Sure. Anytime. Thanks.
Cheers, everyone.